I've always been the responsible one. That was never a question in our family. It was just a fact. Like the color of the walls or the way my sister always burned toast, no matter how many times she adjusted the settings. I was the one who read the fine print. I was the one who called the insurance company back when they underpaid a claim. I was the one who at 26 already had a Roth IRA, a 6-month emergency fund, and a color-coded budget spreadsheet that my college roommate once called aggressively adult. So when the money was gone, all of it, every dollar I had spent 4 years building, the cruelest part wasn't the betrayal. It was the look on my daughter's face when she asked me if the surgery was still happening. She was 9 years old. She had been walking with a limp since she was 6, a hip dysplasia case that her pediatric orthopedist said needed corrective surgery before she turned 11, or the window would close. Not close like it gets harder. Close like she may never walk without pain again. I had $41,200 saved. Every birthday check I didn't spend on myself, every holiday bonus I didn't touch, every tax refund that went straight into a dedicated account I labeled, in my own notes app, Lily's Future. My sister had been struggling since her divorce. That part is true and I won't pretend otherwise. I watched her fall apart in real time and I felt every bit of it. She was living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Phoenix with my nephew, working part-time at a dental office, and she called me crying at least twice a week. I was the older one. I was the stable one. I had a good job. I work as a claims analyst for a regional insurance company, which means I spend my days combing through financial documents looking for inconsistencies. I know how money moves. I know how fraud looks. I know better than most people exactly what it means when the numbers don't add up. None of that helped me see it coming from her. She called me on a Tuesday in March. She said her landlord was threatening eviction if she didn't come up with 2 months back rent by Friday. She said she had nowhere to turn. She said she was scared my nephew was going to have to sleep in her car. She cried. I could hear her breathing go uneven the way it does when she's really upset not performing, or what I thought was not performing. She asked if she could borrow $3,000, just temporarily, just until her tax refund came in. She said she would pay it back within 3 weeks. I said yes. Of course I said yes. She was my sister. But then she asked if it would be easier if I just added her to the account so she could transfer it herself, since I was in the middle of a busy stretch at work, and she didn't want to bother me. She said she'd only take the $3,000. She said she just needed access temporarily. I told myself it made sense. I told myself she was my sister and I had known her for 31 years and she had never once stolen from me. I added her to the account on a Wednesday afternoon during my lunch break. By Thursday morning, the account was empty. I found out the way you find out things you never wanted to know. My phone buzzed with a low balance alert and I opened my banking app on autopilot. The way you check your email without thinking, and the number I saw didn't make sense at first. My brain literally refused it. I refreshed the page, same number. I went into the transaction history and saw 3 transfers all made between 10:47 p.m. and 11:23 p.m. on Wednesday night, $15,000 and $14,000 and 12 towns, 1,200 spread across 36 minutes so that none of them hit the threshold that triggers an automatic fraud flag. She knew. She had thought about this in advance. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time without moving. My daughter came downstairs in her pajamas and asked why I was up so early, and I told her I was just having coffee, and she padded back upstairs, and I just sat there with my phone face down on the table and my coffee going cold. My sister's phone went straight to voicemail. I tried 4 times before 7 a.m. Voicemail every time. I texted her, no delivery receipt, which meant she had either turned her phone off or blocked me. I called her apartment building's front desk. The woman who answered told me my sister had moved out 2 days earlier. 2 days. Before she even called me to ask for the money, she had already started vacating. This had been planned. Every single part of it. I won't tell you I didn't cry because that would be a lie. I cried in my car in the parking garage at work for about 20 minutes before I pulled myself together enough to go inside. I cried in the bathroom at 2 p.m. when a coworker asked how my day was going and the question hit me sideways. But what I mostly felt underneath all of it was something cold and very focused. Because I do this for a living. I look at financial trails every single day, and whatever she had done to cover her tracks, whatever she thought she had hidden, I was going to find it. The first thing I did was file a police report. The officer I spoke to was polite and not particularly hopeful. He told me that because I had voluntarily added her to the account and she was therefore an authorized user, the situation was legally complicated. He used that phrase twice, legally complicated. I wrote it down in my notebook and underlined it, not because I agreed with him, but because I wanted to remember exactly what I was working around. Then I called my bank's fraud and disputes department and spoke to a supervisor. I explained that while my sister was technically on the account, I had added her under fraudulent pretenses. She had misrepresented her situation and her intentions in order to gain access. The supervisor was careful with her words, but she did tell me that if I could provide documentation of the deception, the bank could flag the transfers for review and potentially pursue them as unauthorized under federal wire fraud statutes. I thanked her and hung up and opened my laptop. My sister had told me she needed money because of an eviction notice. She had told me she had nowhere to go. She had described herself as someone who was barely keeping her head above water. So I started looking for where the water ended. It took me 6 hours over 2 evenings, using only publicly available information and records I had legitimate access to, her old social media, her ex-husband's accounts, a Venmo transaction she had made public by accident 3 weeks earlier. That Venmo transaction was a payment to an airline booking service. I found a tagged photo on a mutual friend's Instagram, posted the Thursday she disappeared, showing a margarita on a beach with the caption, "Paradise finally." The geotag said Tulum, Mexico. My sister was in Tulum. She had drained my daughter's surgery fund to go to Tulum with a man she had apparently been seeing for 4 months, a detail I only learned later when my nephew called me from his father's house, where he had apparently been dropped off a week before she called me. She hadn't even had him with her when she made the call. There was no eviction notice. There was no back rent. There was a vacation she couldn't afford, and a sister she knew would answer the phone. I'm going to stop for a second and tell you what it felt like to find that photo. Because people always want to know. They ask if I was angry, and the answer is yes, but that's not the whole picture. What I actually felt, sitting at my kitchen table at 11 p.m. with my daughter asleep upstairs, was something that I can only describe as the permanent rearrangement of a belief I had held my entire life. I had believed, without ever consciously examining it, that my sister loved me. Not perfectly, not without complication, but fundamentally, in the way that family loves family. That belief did not survive seeing that margarita photo. I documented everything, screenshotted everything with timestamps, wrote a full-page summary of the timeline, the discrepancies in her stated situation versus what I could verify, and the financial transfers, and sent it to my bank's legal team along with a formal written request to escalate the case under federal wire fraud statutes. Then I waited. She called me from a different number on a Sunday afternoon, 12 days after the money disappeared. I knew it was her from the area code. She had called me from a 602 number before. I picked up. The first thing she said was not "I'm sorry." The first thing she said was, "You filed a police report against me." Her voice was high and tight in a way I recognized from childhood, the specific pitch she hit when she had been caught doing something and was about to try to make it my fault. I had been hearing that voice for 31 years. I let her finish her opening. She said I had betrayed her. She said she was family, and you don't do this to family. She said the money wasn't that much, and I could rebuild my savings. She said my daughter's surgery didn't have to happen right now, that kids were resilient. My daughter's surgery didn't have to happen right now. I want you to sit with that sentence for a moment, the same way I had to sit with it. I didn't raise my voice. This surprised me, actually. I had expected to. But when she said that, something in me went very quiet and very certain, and I said, I documented the Venmo payment to the airline, the Instagram post, the date you dropped your son at his father's house before you called me, and the exact timestamps of the 3 transfers. I sent all of it to the bank's legal team and to the police detective who has the case. You should probably get a lawyer. And then I hung up. She called back immediately, then again. Then from a third number. On the fourth call I picked up, and she was not the same person she had been 4 minutes earlier. She was crying. Not the uneven breathing cry from when she asked for the money, but a different kind, jagged and genuinely scared. She said she hadn't thought it through. She said she was in over her head. She said she would pay it back, she would figure out a way. Just please don't let this go to federal court, because she could lose her license for her dental office job and then she would have nothing. I said, "You had nothing when you called me, and I helped you. You took $41,200 and you went to Mexico." There was a long silence. "I'm sorry," she said. It was quiet, not performed. "I know," I said. "Get a lawyer." The bank's legal review took 3 weeks, because the transfers had been made in a pattern consistent with fraud, specifically the structure of the amounts, which my detailed timeline helped establish was not coincidental. They were able to work with the police department to support the wire fraud angle. My sister came back from Mexico when her money ran out, which her boyfriend's Venmo activity suggested was about 10 days after she left. She hired a public defender. She did not come to see me. My nephew called me twice during all of this. He's 7 years old. He didn't know the details. His dad hadn't told him, thankfully, but he knew something was wrong between me and his mom. And he called to ask if I was coming to his birthday party in April. I told him I would send him a gift, and that I loved him, and that none of this was about him. And after I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, not thinking about anything in particular. My mother called me once to tell me I was destroying the family. I told her that I was recovering stolen money that had been saved for her granddaughter's medical procedure, and if she wanted to talk about that, I was available. But I was not available to be told I was the problem. She hung up. She hasn't called back. My father texted me 2 weeks later. Just 3 words. "I believe you." I stared at that text for a long time. 3 words from a man who usually communicates in one-word responses and forwarded news articles. I saved the screenshot. The legal process is slow. I won't pretend I have a tidy ending with a gavel and a check in my hand. What I have is this: a partial recovery of funds through the bank's fraud dispute process. $28,400 of the $41,200 returned after the bank's legal team made their determination. My sister is facing charges. Her case is still pending. I don't know what will happen to her, and I have made a deliberate decision to stop trying to predict it. Because every time I do, I end up sitting at my kitchen table at midnight, and that doesn't help anyone. What I know is this: my daughter's surgery is scheduled for September. Her orthopedic surgeon, the one she has seen since she was 6, the one who has watched her limp get slightly worse each year, and who has talked me through every option with the kind of patience I didn't know doctors still had, called my daughter a warrior at her last pre-op appointment. And my daughter, who is 9 and has never once complained about her hip, looked at him very seriously and said, "I know." I nearly lost it right there in the exam room. I excused myself to get water and stood in the hallway for 30 seconds, doing what my therapist calls box breathing, which I had previously thought was something people said to avoid saying. I'm about to cry in a pediatric orthopedic office. We're going to be okay. I know that now in a way I didn't know it 3 months ago. Not because the money came back, not because the legal process is going to deliver something neat and satisfying, but because I sat at a kitchen table at 5 a.m. with a number that made no sense on my phone screen, and I did not fall apart. I got methodical. I got the records. I made the calls. I protected my daughter the only way I actually could, which was not by being the nice, accommodating older sister who absorbed the damage quietly. I used to think being reliable meant being available. I used to think loving someone meant not having a limit. I watched my sister file my love away as a resource she could draw from indefinitely, and I let her, and I called that loyalty. I know now what it actually was. My daughter has a follow-up appointment next week. She's been asking if she'll be able to run after the surgery. Really run, like in PE class, without it hurting. Her doctor says yes. It'll take months of physical therapy, and it will be hard. And she will do it because she is 9 and she has already handled more than 9-year-olds should have to handle. And she is, without question, the most remarkable person I have ever met. When I told her the surgery was back on, she didn't scream or jump around. She just looked at me very carefully and said, "Did you fix it?" And I said yes. And she nodded like that was always going to be the answer and went back to her homework. That's the moment I keep coming back to. Not the police report, not the bank call, not the 4 a.m. transaction history, just my daughter at the kitchen table, nodding, completely certain that I was going to handle it. She never doubted me. I think about how close I came to not deserving that certainty. I think about what it cost me to earn it back. Not from her, she never took it away, but from myself. I am done being the family's financial safety net. I am done translating love into access. I am done picking up calls from numbers I don't recognize and assuming good faith before I have any reason to. I am not done being a good person. I am not done being a good person. I am not done caring about people, but I have learned, the hard way and at a price I didn't choose, that those things are not the same as being endlessly available. If you're reading this and you recognize something in it, the way she asked, the way it felt reasonable in the moment, the way you told yourself it was fine because it was family, I want you to know that you are not stupid for trusting someone you loved. You are just working with information they deliberately falsified. That's not a character flaw. That's a betrayal. And you're allowed to name it exactly that. I keep thinking about the moment my daughter looked at me at that kitchen table and said, "Did you fix it?" Not with fear, not with doubt. Just a quiet, steady question from a 9-year-old who had already decided the answer was yes. She didn't know about the police report or the bank's legal team or the 6 hours I spent building a timeline at midnight. She just knew me. And somehow, that was enough for her. That kind of trust is not something you earn once. It accumulates slowly, invisibly, in every moment you show up when it would have been easier not to. I had spent years building it, not just with my daughter, but with myself. The problem was I had also spent years confusing integrity with availability. I thought being a good person meant never saying no. I thought the measure of how much I loved someone was how much I was willing to absorb. My sister knew that about me. She had watched me be that person for 31 years, and when she needed a resource, she went to the place she knew would hold. What happened between us was a consequence, not fate, not luck, just the accumulated result of choices made by two people over a long time. She chose to see love as something she could draw from without refilling. I chose, again and again, to let her. Neither of those choices was invisible. Neither of them was without a cost. The bill just came in a form I hadn't expected at a time I couldn't afford it. But here's the thing I've had to sit with. The qualities that got me through it were the same ones she tried to exploit. My discipline. The years of budgeting and saving, the color-coded spreadsheets and the untouched tax refunds, that's what built the $41,200 in the first place. My professional judgment, the trained ability to follow financial trail and document what I found, that's what made recovery possible when the emotion alone would have left me stuck. And the part of me that refused to collapse, that cried in the car for 20 minutes and then walked into the office anyway. That's what kept my daughter from seeing me fall apart. I used to think those things were just personality traits. Now I understand their choices. Every single day a choice to do the harder thing, to save instead of spend, to verify instead of assume, to keep moving when stopping felt easier. My sister made different choices. I'm not saying that to be cruel. I'm saying it because it matters, because the distance between where she ended up and where I ended up was not random. It was built incrementally out of thousands of small decisions neither of us was paying much attention to at the time. Lily's surgery is in September. She asked me last week if she'd be able to run in PE without her hip hurting. I told her yes. She nodded and went back to her math homework, completely satisfied with that answer. She has never once doubted that I would figure it out. I think I need to start borrowing some of that faith for myself. Not blind faith. Not the kind that lets people walk through you, but the grounded kind. The kind that says, I have handled hard things before. I will handle this one too, and I will not make myself smaller in the process to make someone else more comfortable. That's the version of strength I want her to grow up watching.